Is hate on the rise in America? The Chicago Police Department documented 72 hate crime incidents last year, a more than 20% increase compared to the previous year. Other major U.S. cities noted similar upticks in hate crimes last year. In making sense of the increase, some have pointed to the at times inflammatory campaign rhetoric of then presidential candidate Donald Trump. Are hate crimes being underreported or overreported? Joining us to discuss hate crimes in America are Betsy Schuman Moore. She's director of the Hate Crime Project of the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. Adrian Burgos, history professor at the University of Illinois. And Charles Butler, host of the radio show The Reality Check on Genesis Communications Network. And welcome all to Chicago tonight. Betsy Schuman Moore, real quickly, what is a hate crime exactly?
To oversimplify a little, a hate crime is when there's a crime motivated by bias. And the Illinois Hate Crime Act defines the crimes as being motivated by race, religion, ethnic origin, sexual orientation, disability, gender, and gender identity. So when there's a crime plus the element of bias, it's a hate crime.
How does one prove bias?
The most common way of proving bias is by the words that are expressed by the offender at the time of the crime. But there can be other circumstantial or other kinds of indications, such as there was a synagogue desecration in which the offender put a swastika on the synagogue at the same time. So that's another example.
Charles Butler, should there be a separate category for hate crimes?
Well, I don't know if there should or shouldn't be. I know that when I look at real hate crimes, they were perpetrated against blacks, like lynching. And in this city, constantly police misconduct, as Ms. Lightfoot talked about. So I think that the categories have been blurred, and there are far too many categories underneath the term hate crime.
For example, what categories shouldn't be included?
I don't think that sexual orientation. How do I know what someone's sex is, what their sexual orientation is? You don't know. What precipitated you to know that? We look at a situation where Michael Orr was just charged with assault and battery when a man touched his face. The man admitted, I touched his face. Why would you touch someone's face? And Michael Orr punched him out. But they charged Michael Orr when he was clearly defending himself.
Adrian Burgos, how about that? Has the category of hate crimes become too inclusive?
Well, again, I think it's
too many categories, that is?
I don't think there's too many categories. I think what we really have to look at is what is the encounter? What happens? What was there a bias expressed? You know, when there's something that happens outside of a bar that's known where homosexuals, where lesbian, LGBTQ people stay, and, you know, you have to look at the context, particularly if the offender is striking out against that person because of that. Similarly, you know, we know from the history down in Texas that there were many Mexicans and others who were also lynched as part of the 1850s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And so, you know, we have to look at the context, the historical context of what's happening. Similarly, we see on college campuses today where Latinos are targeted because many times the discourse about illegality. And they don't ask us for our papers about whether to, say you're illegal. They kind of blanket it out. And that's where we think about, bias can be entering into this, and we have to know those.
Most Latinos are considered white. Let's be clear here. You guys have taken on this identity of Latino. You were white. Like Raul Rivera, he was a white man. Latinos have historically been considered Caucasian. You're classified as Caucasian. So this whole identity, it's just, like I said, it's just an example. So let's include skinny people. When Mayor Daley's nephew, who weighed 270 pounds, knocked this young man out and killed this young man who was 150 pounds, was that a hate crime? Because the man didn't weigh 200 pounds? Let's include him.
Betsy Schuman Moore, we're talking about different classes of protected classes. I take it weight is not a protected class in the context of an encounter?
No, it's not. The legislature has determined that these are the appropriate categories. The most recent one that was added was gender identity, and I believe that was because of the increase in attacks on people that are transgender. So it's a very serious crime, and hate crimes are singled out for special attention because they have a special extra impact on not just the individual, the group they belong to, and even the community in which they happen. So because of this increased negative impact, there's more resources that are poured in to counter them, and there can be a higher penalty for that.
So in other words, it's not just a crime against an individual, it's a crime against the group. Charles Butler, do you believe hate crimes are in the increase?
No, I don't. I think that when I look at the data, and I've been looking at data since Evan called me early today.
The producer.
The producer. They seem to be level. And
what data are you referring to?
FBI data at the FBI criminal data. The latest stats we had were 2015 on the judicial labor site. I have it here, but the reality is.
So the statistics are not yet available for 2016.
For 2016, except they came out. I call the FBI because I'm part of the FBI Citizens Academy here in Chicago, and to get their latest data, it just it's not out. But
how about it, Betsy Schuman-Moore? Your job is to keep track of this sort of thing. Are hate crimes on the rise? Again, the statistics from the FBI go up to 2015, and they don't show dramatic increases.
Right. It takes quite a while for the data to be reported into the FBI, so they don't have numbers in real time. But from talking to the Southern Poverty Law Center that collects hate crime reports, and CARE, Council of American Islamic Relations here in Chicago, there's a lot of reporting in also community groups that we talk to, especially in the immigrant and within that the Latino community, are all reporting increases in hate incidents and hate crime.
Well, listen to me. The Southern Poverty Leadership Council, or Center for one, has been discredited on numerous occasions. CARE is just a propaganda arm of Muslim Brotherhood. So for anybody, they won't even come on and talk to you because you constantly discredit what they talk about and what they do.
Are there other institutions, colleges, whatever, that are reporting an increase in hate crime besides the ones you mentioned?
Yes, I mean it's a consensus of opinion that there's an uptick in hate crimes since during the political campaign, the presidential campaign. There is an increase.
Adrian, what are you hearing from students?
I hear from students that there is tension, and in particular when there's rhetoric about building the wall and it's targeted toward very specific individuals. And when I say targeted, there's desecration of buildings. There's graffiti put on, build the wall, Trump is right, deport them all. And when they say deport them all, they're not saying, again, let me check each one of your papers. And what Charles was saying earlier about Latinos were not all white. Ask Roberto Clemente. He was not white. So
Roberto Clemente was considered a black man because of the color of his skin.
He is a black man.
And let me say this about Latinos who are in Mexico and other Latin countries. They're treated like third-class citizens, and you know it and I know it.
I know,
you don't see them on TV. You don't see them in politics. You discriminate against blacks in your own in those countries.
Well, let's stay focused on the issue of hate crimes in this country.
Yes.
Charles Butler, some people say that the presidential election has inflamed racial sentiment in this country, and that has led to a rise in hate crimes. Well, your reaction to that?
I think that
a connection between the campaign and the election of President Trump and a rise in hate crimes.
I've been on Trump's team or in that camp since June of 2015 when he came here to Chicago to Maggiano's and did a speech, and he got 5 standing applauses from Democratic business people. The bottom line is these racist people, the few that we have in this, are trying to attach themselves to Trump. It's just like the Tea Party. Racist people tried to attach themselves to the Tea Party. A lot of these incidents of so-called hate crimes we find are being perpetrated by progressives and liberals and these anarchists that Soros is funding.
How about that, Betsy Schuman-Moore? There is an accusation that there are fake hate crimes, people who are just trying to stir the pot.
Well, there might be a small percentage of that happening, but certainly not. I mean, most hate crimes are committed by just average people. One really common scenario is just a chance encounter of 2 people. There's no truth to that. There's no.
There's a lot of truth to that. In fact, there was an incident just recently at St. Olaf College in Minnesota, 45 miles north of Minneapolis.
Actually, it's south of Minneapolis.
But it said north in the article. It said 45 minutes north of Minneapolis. I don't know. I didn't look at it. I just read the article. But bottom line is the president of the college they went out, they addressed it, the kids rioted, they came to the occasion, which is great, but at the end of the day, it was false. They had put a note on a black student's car, some hate note on a black student's car. Well, I grew up in this stuff. I grew up in a racially charged environment, have been involved in race relations since I was in the 8th grade. Pontiac, Michigan, University of Michigan, we did a BAM strike where we took over the university, and the president of the university at that time worked with us. So I was in the Navy. I was in Meridian, Mississippi, where the 12 miles from where the civil rights leaders got lynched.
Okay, let's move on. Adrian Burgos, how about it? Do you think there's a connection between the presidential campaign and the election of Donald Trump and an increase in hate crimes?
I think the increase in racial incidents and in hate crimes is rooted with how people feel freer to express what can be very much targeted and hate speech. And so, it happens that people are both aware and people are reporting it. And so there's the mechanisms that people can report that I feel like I was the target of this. In particular, undocumented students have been stepping up and saying, I'm being targeted here, and I'm going to be unafraid. I'm going to speak out. There's been organizing around this. And in particular, the DACA students are fascinating because what we have are individuals who were brought as children.
The dreamers.
The dreamers. And it's an opportunity that America has. These are college students. These are smart, bright individuals who were brought here not of their own volition, and it's a resource for us, and we're slamming that golden door in their face.
We're almost out of time, but Betsy Schuman-Moore, your response to the observation in some quarters that there is a connection between the campaign, the election of President Trump, and the rise in hate crimes.
Well, I think that we can cite a fair number of examples where people have referred to the wall, have referred to Trump, unfortunately, in these hate crimes. So I agree that I think that it's freed up people, unfortunately, to express their bigoted views.
Charles Butler, I'll let you finish up in just in the 10 seconds we have left.
We should build the wall. DACA children's parents should be responsible for them, not the state, not the feds. These people don't need to be here unless they're over 18 years old.
Slightly off topic from the subject, but thank you for your concluding remarks. Betsy Schuman-Moore, Adrian Burgos, and Charles Butler, thank you for being here. And up next, the dangerous work of the Radium Girls. Stay with us.